Welcome once again, everyone, to week 4 here of Buddhism 101. So this is it. This is the last week. So really glad that we were able to do this here, and thanks for coming. Thanks for participating. So welcome everyone online too. Yeah, thank you all for joining. I see people are watching on the YouTube channel and all that. So that's really great. So thank you so much. Let's see. So yeah, why don't we get started as usual with just a little bit of generating good positive motivation for being here today. So we're here to study the Buddhist teachings a little bit, talk about them, learn a little bit more about them, learn maybe some things we didn't know before. Maybe I will too, I hope. I kind of do, sometimes, or I remember things. Oh yeah, the Dalai Lama did say that one time. And so it refreshes my memory on things too. So it's really positive. So for all of us, we want to develop a nice positive motivation. May this study enrich our spiritual practice, not just for ourselves, but also to benefit all sentient beings. We're on a long path here. This is not just something that we're developing ourselves just for a little while or a few years. This is a lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. So we want to create as much habituation to spiritual practice as we can, and create as much positive potential and positive merit as we can, so that we can truly be of benefit to other beings. So if not now, in the future. So we'll go ahead and set that as our motivation today, and whatever kind of motivation practice you have, or whatever ideas you have about a positive motivation, go ahead and generate those in your heart right now. So let's go ahead too and just do a minute or so of just quiet sitting meditation, calm abiding meditation, just bringing our awareness into the present moment. It's a Tuesday evening here, so we're getting into the usual work week and the grind of things sometimes for some of us. So let's just make sure we're coming in, we're letting go of the day, everything that we've experienced today, and just and also worrying about the future. And let's just come into the present moment, bring our awareness to our bodies, and bring our awareness for just a few moments to our breath. Okay. All right. Well, here we go. So let's dive into this one. I've been actually looking forward to this one. I got some emails from people online, from the online participants and stuff, with some nice questions, things that we can talk about today, because today is kind of opening up the field a little bit and just saying like, okay, so what do you want to know about Buddhism? What are the things that maybe are confusing or perplexing? Which I'm sure for me it's still a pretty long list. So so I'm sure everyone's got a lot of questions. So I've compiled a little bit of that here. First, real quick, we'll just review last week. Last week we talked about lists, and more lists. So we talked about all this. This can be kind of intimidating. We're just hearing all these lists of things. The 3 higher trainings and the 6 perfections and the 4 noble truths and the 4 thoughts that turn the mind from the Dharma, or 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, and it's just like endless. Sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming, but we kind of talked about why that's important, why that's a method of being able to easily recall the teachings in our own minds, in our own practice, so we don't have to have things written down all the time. So if we can think real quickly, okay, I'm going to do a meditation on the 6 perfections, for example. If you memorize these 6 things, then it's a little bit easier then to remember all the teachings maybe you had on, all the different perfections. So generosity, ethics, patience, choice, effort, meditative stabilization, wisdom. You can just kind of go through the list and just go like, okay, so what did my teacher say about generosity? What is generosity? How do I enact it in my own life? What are the different types of generosity? So we just are able then to just more easily do these analytical meditations, and then basically I liken it to turning over the soil in a garden, and turning it over with the rich manure and fertilizer and things like that. So we're actually doing that into our minds, into our lives, and we're taking these teachings that are so rich and nourishing, and we're bringing them inside, and we're turning them all around and mixing them up with our mind stream. And we're also actually examining the teachings as we do that sort of practice as well. So we're examining them and not just memorizing things, but actually looking at them and saying like, are these things true? Are these things applicable? Do they make sense? Are they valuable? Do they actually benefit me and others? That sort of thing. So that's why these lists are really useful and really helpful in our practice. We can quickly bring these things to mind. We can also quickly bring these things to mind when we're not meditating too, when we're out, getting upset in traffic, or, listening to the news or whatever, or scrolling through Facebook, Yes, patience, so we can just remember that like, oh yeah, patience is one of the 6 perfections. That's one of the things I'm training in. And so then you can come back and kind of, again, you're training yourself on your cushion, so then when you go out into the world, you can apply these things, so they don't become these static, meaningless teachings that you just kind of think about, but you actually kind of bring out into the world. So last week we talked mostly about the 6 perfections. There was quite a few lists there. So I just kind of recommend that, if you keep this little, printout here, that if you like, once in a while, just do a quick Google search, on the 4 immeasurables or something like that, or the 10 non-virtuous actions, and maybe you do a little search on YouTube or something and find a teacher that maybe you might be attracted to, and listen to some further teachings on these that are going to be a lot more spot on than anything that is going to come out of this mouth right here. So anyway, so that was a nice class. That was a nice fun class. Today again, we're going to do kind of this class. We're opening it up to the class here, the participants a little bit. I have a few things here we can start going through, but really at any time, if you have a question, I sent out an email today. So if online you haven't seen that email, my phone number's in there. So if you want to text me with a question, something maybe comes to mind right here spontaneously in the class, go ahead and text me, and we'll try to answer it as best I can here. So if it's possible. Just a couple of things that actually some people sent some questions via email over the past few weeks. We have a couple of really good ones here that are great for illuminating a lot of this mystery here. So what's in the shrine room, and is there any sort of shrine room etiquette that we need to be aware of? So why don't we just do a quick kind of view as to what we're looking at here when we come into our shrine room here. So there's tanka paintings, which are pictures of various, sometimes Buddhas, different types of Buddhas, and different meditational deities, they're called. And you may ask, okay, so what do you mean different Buddhas? Well, we've been talking about Shakyamuni Buddha a lot here as the founder of Buddhism. So so there's multiple Buddhas? Yes, there's actually countless Buddhas, especially in this Tibetan Mahayana Vajrayana tradition. There actually is no limit to the number of Buddhas there can be. So, and we're all actually expressions of Buddha nature ourselves. We're just completely unaware of that and unable to even imagine that in our current state. So, or at least it's super, super difficult to even can entertain that as a possibility. Really? No, I don't think so. But yeah, so we have all these enlightened expressions here. So we've got different, next time maybe you're in the shrine room, maybe you can ask myself or John about the specific ones. But over here we've got green Tara, we've got Amitayus, which is the Buddha of long life. We've got the blue deity here is Medicine Buddha. Yeah, all the colors do represent, different things. I'm not sure exactly on all of that, but, colors and ritual implements and clothing items and necklaces and all these sorts of things do all have very specific symbolic meaning. So, here we've got Manjushri, who is the meditational deity, bodhisattva of wisdom, of enlightened wisdom specifically. And for example, like his sword is represents enlightened discernment, being able to cut through delusion and being able to just cut all of our delusions at their root. He's got Dharma text there as well, and a white lotus flower representing his compassion as well. So all kinds of wonderful symbolism there. Shakyamuni Buddha is right here behind me there, and then we've got Chenrezig or Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion over here. So we've got actually wisdom over here, compassion over here, and then Shakyamuni in the center. It's not always going to be like that when you walk into a shrine, but in this shrine room, that's what's there, and that's actually a very nice, thing to have, and you might actually see that sometimes in other shrines. So we've also got an offering shrine as well, which has a image of the Buddha on there, generally a statue. A lot of times there's what's called a stupa, which is a small symbol of the Buddha's enlightened mind. And then there's going to be Dharma text as well of some sort. So you've got the three jewels on there. You've got the Buddha, you've got the three aspects of enlightened body, speech, and mind of all the Buddhas. So the statue is the body, the stupa would be the mind, and then the Dharma text would represent the teachings or the Dharma. So and then there's offerings on there as well, and these are symbolic offerings that if you haven't seen the shrine class that I did a little while ago, let me know and I'll send you a link to that, and you can watch that and kind of check that out. But the offerings of water, offerings of food and flowers, incense, all these kinds of things are generosity practices on our part, and they're ways for us to train our minds in generosity. It's not necessarily that we're offering to Buddhas, and hoping to get something out of it, some sort of, saying like, please, here, I'll give you this if you give me that. It's not like that kind of a thing. It's actually, the Buddhas don't need anything. They don't want anything. They're completely beyond, subject-object grasping, duality, all of that. So they don't need things. But what they do rejoice in, and what we're told to train our minds in, imagining the Buddha's rejoicing at these offerings, because we're cultivating this great generosity. And so when we do offerings at the shrine, we're actually trying to use our imaginations to offer limitless offerings to limitless beings, actually, on behalf of limitless beings. And so we're saying, like, may I be able to cultivate this perfect generosity. So we had in last week in 6 perfections, that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming for this perfect generosity so that we're continuously, spontaneously giving everything to everyone at all times. So that's kind of what we're training in when we're doing these offering practices here in the shrine. Candles represent the light of the Dharma that illuminates darkness and suffering. So you can think of that when you're offering a candle at your shrine, things like that. Or even if you don't have a shrine quite as elaborate at this, if you have some sort of image of the Buddha and you make an offering of a candle every day, every morning or something like that, and you think to yourself as you're lighting it, may this be a light that guides all sentient beings out of the darkness of suffering. May it continuously, lifetime after lifetime, lead all beings to the Dharma so that they may experience this path and come in contact with this path. May I also come in contact with this path always, until we all attain enlightenment. So, so shrines have a lot of stuff going on. So the offering shrines. Behind us here, we've got this kind of little raised, what is it called, a dais or something like that? I don't know, a little raised pedestal for the chair that the Dharma teacher sits on, like a qualified Dharma teacher who's received transmissions and empowerments and things like that. Sits a little bit higher so that so that they can be seen. That's kind of one reason for it. But also what we're doing is we're all just sort of recognizing that the teachings are very, very special. They're very important. It's not that we're elevating the person or the personality. It's really not about that, or that's hopefully what we're not doing here. What we're doing is we're saying this person who is teaching the Dharma here is teaching the pure Dharma, and it's the Dharma that we're paying reverence to. Now, there are definitely teachers who come here and who are going to come here who do represent, who are in them of themselves, like reincarnated masters and things like that, in this Tibetan tradition especially. And so, yes, probably to them, like if anyone of His Holiness the Dalai Lama were here, we'd want to build a really nice, a nice throne. He wouldn't really care about that, but we would want to do that to just appreciate just how special he is and what a treasure and what a gift he is to the world and to sentient beings. So really, it's just about respecting. Again, it's not an ego thing. It's not it's not a person. It hasn't have anything to do with any one individual's personality. We're saying that this is where the Dharma is going to be taught from. It's a special place. We give it a little bit of respect. So let's see. So we talked about the shrine. Oh, shrine room etiquette a little bit. So we have all these sacred objects in here. We've got a place where we're studying the Dharma. We have a place where the Dharma is being taught. We have a place where people are practicing the Dharma. So there, in a lot of this, you have to understand, comes from Asian culture. So to us, there's going to be some things that are a little bit strange. But again, these are all things that the things that I'm going to talk about here are just ways that we're mindful, we cultivate mindfulness, and that we generate respect for the teachings in the Dharma. So like when we come in to the shrine room, you'll notice we take off our shoes. So somebody did ask, why do we do that? Why do we take off our shoes? This is, again, something that has to do a lot with Asian culture, where the shoes, when they're outside, they're dirty, and they collect a lot of dust and dirt and mud and things like that. And we want to keep the shrine room clean. We want to keep it a nice space that symbolizes purity of motivation, purity of practice, purity of the application of the teachings, these sorts of things, purity of mind. Bringing our minds into a place that is, where our minds can come and be at ease. So if we just kind of track mud in and just kind of leave trash around and things like that, we don't want to do that in our own homes necessarily. So especially in a Dharma center, in a place where we're doing our best to try to understand these teachings, we want to show a little bit of respect. So we leave our shoes at the door. And again, it's a kind of an Asian thing, but it's also it has this practical aspect too of just keeping the place clean. Dharma texts or anything that has any Dharma in them also in the shrine room. One etiquette, or in general, actually, not just in the shrine room, but if we receive any sort of Dharma text that we're studying from, or a book or anything like that has Dharma in it, teachings in it, we want to treat that with a lot of respect as well. So we don't want to set that on the floor. We don't want to step over it. with our feet, that's considered to be, just disrespectful. Now, again, nothing like objectively bad is going to happen if you step over a Dharma text, or it doesn't mean that you're not a good practitioner or something like that. But once you kind of know these things, that this is considered to be a little bit disrespectful for the Dharma, then it's just a mindfulness practice where you're like, oh, and I've done it, I still do it, I'll just accidentally like set my text on the ground, or it'll drop it and it'll fall on the ground. And you don't freak out about it. You just go, oh, that's the Dharma, that's precious. And you can pick it up and then just respectfully, put it on the top of your head. That's one thing you can do, to just kind of like to say like, hey, no, I made a mistake. I accidentally set this on the ground, but I do totally respect this, and have a lot of love for the Dharma. So you can kind of reset your motivation that way. But it's a mindfulness practice. It's a practice where you're trying to be as aware as possible as what you're doing, because a lot of times, again, when we go out into the world, into life, we get caught up into things. We get caught up into a routine where we're kind of sleepwalking and we're not very aware of what's going on. So this gives us opportunities to be mindful and respectful of the teachings. Also, and this is especially true when we have teachers coming who are either monastics or in the Tibetan tradition or whatever, Tenzin Priyadarshi, people like that. We don't ever want to sit with our feet like pointing at them. Generally, we don't want to do that with holy objects or statues and stuff like that either, because again, in Asian culture, especially Indian culture, all Asian cultures, the bottom of the feet are considered to be, if you point those at people, you're basically saying like, I'm better than you, and you're saying I don't have any respect for you, that sort of thing. So even your shoes actually are I've been corrected sometimes for like holding my shoes too close to, like not even thinking about it, holding my shoes next to a Dharma text, and like Tibetan will be like, what are you doing? That's totally like horrible. And I'm like, oh, sorry. And especially, if we have like a Tibetan teacher come here, they wouldn't say anything, of course. They wouldn't like be, overtly offended or anything, but in their mind, it would be basically like, somebody giving you the middle finger, it would be that kind of emotional response for us. I've actually had a Tibetan Lama for an entire teaching or entire section of a teaching. He was counting things and he went like this, like this, like this, and like this, and was like, and then this final point here, and he was just doing it for like 15 minutes to like the entire crowd, and we were all just like, just because he didn't know that he didn't know what it meant, But I was just thinking, that's probably what a Tibetan would feel if, like, the whole crowd, had their feet pointed to him as he was teaching, or her as she was teaching. To have this sort of like that feeling of like, that's kind of odd, like, why am I getting flipped off here?
Are you sure he wasn't doing it on purpose?
He might have been, yeah. But yeah, because he was, no, he might have totally, it had nothing to do with the teaching, but I can totally see, because I've received teachings from that Lama before, and I know that he likes to do stuff like that, so that that definitely will push your buttons a little bit, maybe. So and just have you examine, like, what's going on here? Look at the ego, look at the self, look at the emotions. So, but I just thought that's a good equation, that's a good example of how we would feel. So again, it's just a way of showing respect and things like that. What else? Shrine room etiquette. So treating the Dharma with respect. Actually, we can go into. We talked a little bit about the Buddha's who's here. So, and again, these are all representations of different aspects of enlightened mind, and so we consider them to be equal to Shakyamuni Buddha's realization. It's the same realization. So we do respect those as well. So somebody asked as well, like, why does John prostrate or do bows before a teaching, and why does he do 3, right? So this is definitely has to do with respect. I mean, there's definitely, you're offering respect here, but it goes quite a bit deeper than that, actually. What a prostration is, what a bow is a acknowledgement that we have been keeping ourselves, our own sense of ego, at the center of things for time immemorial, since the beginning of time, countless lifetimes before this. We've just been saying, like, I'm the most important thing it's ever been, I am just, everybody is in, like we talked about before, everybody's in, this is my movie, and everyone else is in a supporting role, and thank you to the Academy, and I'm just, so glad to be here tonight, and, like, everything is about us, and whether it's good or bad or whatever, and this is the problem. This is the problem, that we're stuck in this incorrect assessment of our experience of reality. So it's the ego. It's always putting ourselves first in one way or another, and if we're honest with ourselves, we do that a lot. Even when we're trying to not do that, even when we're trying to train in compassion and love and putting others first. I mean, there definitely are people who are exceptional. I'm saying, like, I'm not that. So like, most of our ordinary beings are struggling with that. So what we do in part to break down that ego grasping, in part to break down that, like, I am the most important person in the world, is that we come before either a teacher who we have examined and who we have determined to be a representation of the Buddhist teachings, a statue that inspires us, or a statue that is simply we recognize as being a representation of a Buddha or enlightened body, speech, and mind. What else? A picture of our teachers can also be an object to give bows to. But what we're doing is that we're consciously saying, for just this moment, at least for this moment, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to let go of that ego grasping for a moment. And I'm going to look outside myself at what's truly reliable, a truly reliable, enlightened refuge. And I'm going to say, like, this is what I'm going to prostrate to. This is what I'm going to bow down to. Instead of bowing down to myself all the time, I'm going to bow down to this. And so you're kind of like, you're swallowing your pride, your ego, your self-grasping, your self-importance for just a second, and just saying, like, no, this has been my problem all along, and it's gotten me into so much trouble. So now I'm going to go ahead and, with great respect, and you'll see John do do 3 prostrations. He takes his hands first like this in the middle, and it's said that we kind of imagine that we're holding the wish-fulfilling jewel of enlightened wisdom and compassion, and we're keeping that like a precious jewel within our hand, the bodhicitta it's called, the mind of enlightenment, and we're saying, like, okay, so this is this precious thing. And then we come to the top of our head, and the crown of the head, typically in our tradition here, is symbolic of the body. And then we bring our hands to our throat then, which is symbolic of our speech. And then we come to our heart center, which is symbolic of our mind. And so these are the 3 doors, they're called, the 3 ways in which we accumulate karma, whether bad or good. So it's either through our body, so whether it's killing or stealing, or good karma, like giving things or protecting life or whatever. We do things with our body. We do things with our speech, the way we talk to people, what we talk about, things like that. We accumulate karma that way, and then we accumulate karma with our minds as well. So our thoughts, our concepts, our jealousy, our greed, our malice, incorrect views of things, those sorts of things. So we are accumulating karma through these 3 doors, these 3 ways. So what we're doing then when we do prostrations is we're saying, like, with my body, my speech, and my mind, I prostrate to all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. I prostrate to the 3 jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And then you go down and you do these prostrations, and as your head touches the ground, you're just sort of, there's some symbolic meaning to that I forgot. But anyway, maybe if I think of it, I'll remember. But yeah, basically it is just putting your head down at the feet of these enlightened beings that you're imagining in front of you. And it is an act of profound respect and humility. And then you just come back up, and then you do 3. And then we do 3 generally because we're prostrating to the 3 jewels, to the Buddha, to the Dharma, and to the Sangha. So we've got the Buddha, the enlightened, being. We've got the teachings that actually lead you out of suffering and out of ignorance and liberate from samsara. And then you've got the sangha, which is the beings who followed the path and became enlightened themselves. So, so as we're doing those prostrations, then we can also imagine on either side of us, our mother on our left, our father on our right, all of our family around us, people we don't know, and then people down in front of us that we really just can't stand. And we put them down in a place of special honor, and then we can also imagine ourselves with infinite, countless bodies as well, if you want to do that. But I've been taught a lot to do it with this visualization of other beings around you, and then leading all sentient beings. You do these prostrations. So that is, in short, why we do prostrations and what we do. But it's definitely something that cuts down at the self-grasping ego. That's the main purpose of that, to consciously do that, to just say, okay, so I'm going to take another stab at this ego that's given me so much trouble.
It's also very Asian. The Confucius and the Han philosophies, where the individual is not as important as the group. So you're always call it kowtowing.
Okay.
And also people will go down and say, "I've made a mistake, kill me," because they would chop off their heads. In Asia, the higher ups would do that. Right. So it's like a supplication.
Yeah, and it's an Asian tradition to bow to other people, show them respect, show them that they're basically saying you're more important than me.
But even going all the way down, they do that a lot.
Yeah, sure. And then in Indian culture, they do the bow, and it's bowing. Oh, I've heard. I'm not sure if this is exactly true or not. Even though I lived over there, I'm not sure. But it's supposed to be they're kind of recognizing the divinity within others as well. And you're saying like
namaste.
Namaste. Yeah. So.
Also in Islam, they do it.
Right.
When they do their prayers, they bow down.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So again, I mean, this is all done pretty much in all cultures to some degree, and it's all about respect. It's all about putting someone else ahead of yourself, that sort of a thing. So, but in the Buddhist tradition, it goes into great detail as to all the visualizations and really just really thinking about this ego problem, this self-centeredness, this self-grasping. So what time is it anyway? I didn't look at the time. Okay, we got a lot of time. Okay. Any questions about prostrations or anything so far? Or?
So when we pray to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, it's kind of like we're praying to all holy beings.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly.
Like they've all achieved a state of holiness.
A state, yeah. I mean, you can say that. Yeah. Enlightenment, yeah. Realization. I mean, they're definitely beyond. They're beyond where we're at, what they've accomplished, what they know, and the sort of their the nature of their minds is pure and pristine, and so there is this sense of, I mean, and you will run into quite a few enlightened Tibetan teachers who you're like, yeah, they're holy. I mean, they just radiate this incredible energy that is nothing short. You can't say that it's not. It brings tears to your eyes, and you can't do anything but sob, because it just shakes something loose in you, So yeah, you can say holy. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. In the sense of being pure, They're not playing games. They're not playing the usual game. They're not looking to get anything out of us. They're not looking to manipulate anything or play an angle, So, we're always looking for something, It's like, what do I get out of this enlightenment thing? What am I going to get? and it's okay. I mean, that's just where we're at, but they're not there. You know, they're beyond that. So yeah. So yeah. So anyway, I thought this was a question that I asked somebody in the beginning, and I never got a good answer on it, actually, for a long time. I was like, so what's the deal with the malas? I was over in India for the first time, and I asked somebody, and the person was busy, so that they were like, I'm sorry, I would love to tell you, but I have to go, and I don't have time. But basically, in short, it's really nothing. It's not that complicated, actually. It's just a rosary, and it's a way that well, maybe it is a little complicated, but like everything in Tibetan Buddhism, especially, there's like many layers of meaning, but basically, it's a rosary, and it's a way for, I don't know if anyone's Catholic, coming from a Catholic tradition, when you go to you're like 6 years old and you go to your confession or whatever, and you make up some things, and then the priest says, okay, so go and take your rosary and say this many Hail Marys and this many Our Fathers, and all that sort of stuff, and and you use your rosary to count those, and that's what it is. It's a mindfulness tool. It's a way to just keep track of the prayers that you're doing. Same thing with a mala, with a Buddhist rosary. There's and if you have a teacher, if you have a lama, if you have a guru, he or she might at times say, like, okay, so I want you to say 100,000 of this prayer, or this mantra, or a million, or whatever, you got time, right? I mean, if you don't die before then, then just shoot for 1 million, or whatever. And so then this is a way to count those. So there's different little things on here that represent different things. So you've got 108 beads. So for every one mala, you go ahead and you push one of these guys over, and that's one mala. Okay, so then you go back and you turn around, you do the second mala, then you push another one over, and that's 200 then, about, and then so on, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then once you do the last one, then you pull these back down, reset those, and then this one over here is 1,000. So that's 10 malas. So you push that over, so that's 1,000. After you do 10 of these, then that's what? That's 10,000. So then you move this one. You move this little guy over one bead, so that's 10,000. And then you can go down and you can do like a whole, you can do 1 million and change on a mala. So yeah.
It's like an abacus.
It's an abacus, exactly. Totally, yes.
So it's actually marking your place on which bead it's onto.
Yeah.
Behind which bead it sits. How do you know?
Whoa.
You don't have all that stuff on yours.
From the top?
What's that?
Are they both
Either.
marking the same number from your guru bead?
I don't understand what you mean.
So there's two.
Uh-huh.
Of the
Oh, yeah. So yeah, I just do it like that. You don't have to do it like that, but it's 21. So I do that because a lot of times you say like 21 of a mantra. So it's just nice to have that. So then I don't have to like go and like count and say, okay, where am I? Am I at 19? Oh, I'm at 19. Okay, so I got 2 more. So sometimes for a practice, you'll just do 21 mantra recitations of a mantra. So that's why I put them here.
21 malas worth.
No, not 21 mantras. So say, remember yesterday we did the long Vajrasattva mantra, and that's one's pretty long, so you can get, so you
just do 21 of those?
Yeah, during like a practice.
Okay.
That's a common number to do like 21 mantras. What?
Why not 20?
I'm not sure actually. That's a good question. There is numerological significance to most of this stuff, all of it.
I did read something about the origin of the 108.
Yeah.
I forget what it was. So.
Yeah. The 108 is a really like significant number in numerology. It's a significant number in just ancient astronomy and understanding of the world. It's a divine number. 1 + 8 = 9, and 9 is a divine number, and it's also it's a number of completion. It's a number. I think I'm not sure about that, but yeah. Okay. But also modern mathematics. It's like a very magical kind of number. It does all kinds of crazy tricks and stuff like that. But it's to be found in many sort of foundational aspects of our physical reality. So references to 108 and 9. So
Why the left hand?
I don't know about that. Because in Indian culture you do the right, actually, and you eat with the right, and because you use your left hand for wiping your butt. So
It's true.
And then you go like this.
yeah, then you go like this. Yeah. So
You go like this.
yeah.
So it doesn't matter. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know why the left hand exactly, but yeah. Anyway. So.
I never thought of that.
Sorry, I work in food service. So
No, it's fine. I've worked as a bartender for many years, so no problem.
I can't imagine
So basically that's what it is. It's for counting your prayers. It's also, there's an aspect to it of when we're reciting mantras. Again, we talked about the 3 doors: the body, speech, and mind. So generally speaking, we use our body, speech, and mind to accumulate negative karma, or at the very least neutral karma. And what we want to do is to try to shift that as much as possible to accumulating as much positive spiritual karma as we can. So when we're reciting mantras, we're accumulating good karma with using our speech. We're also accumulating good karma with our minds, because we're doing visualizations a lot of times when we're doing the mantras, or at least we're having positive thoughts, or trying to anyway. And then we also generate positive karma with our bodies, because we're using a physical object that helps promote mindfulness too. So we're doing this physical activity then that is a positive thing. So rather than smashing a bug, or stealing somebody's Cheerios or whatever, we're doing something good. So we align those 3 doors with positive meritorious, virtuous activities. So that's another reason why we use them all.
So malas are used in Islam also, and in Judaism, and in Christianity.
Yeah.
And there's the idea of constant remembrance in Islam.
Yeah.
You use the mala to cite the 99 names of God, and you chant those one specific name or another, and it's called constant remembrance, and that's what you use the mala for.
Right.
So it's interesting that it's in like all these major cultures and religions.
Yeah.
And I suspect it's really also about praying, but also about that remembrance.
Yeah.
Because you're remembering the divine qualities of the Creator and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I find from personal experience, like I don't do well if I'm not using my mala, like reciting mantras. I'll get distracted and I'll just stop reciting the mantras. But when I got the mala in my hand, then I'm like, even though my mind is still going off in 1,000 directions a lot of times, most of the time, I can keep on going. And then that way I'm just like still doing the mantra, and then like every once in a while I'll be like, oh, that's right, I'm doing mantras. Oh yeah, I'll do this visualization. Yeah. And so it helps to keep that, continuity. Yeah, that groundedness. And then too, there's opportunities to remember, because you feel the mala in your hand and you're like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm doing mantras. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to make for dinner tonight, so. So also I've heard a couple of people say that the reason why there's 108 beads on there is so that, because we're so distracted that, we'll at least have, at the end, we'll at least have 100 mantras that we've been mindful for. And then 8 of them, of course, will be distracted. Well, for me, it's usually the opposite. It's usually I'll have 8 that maybe I might be a little bit mindful for, and then 100 that I've actually like not even been there. So, but I've heard that being said too. So it's like they put down the extra there, so that way when you're doing like say like 100,000 of a mantra, you've got these extra, whatever it is, 8,000 that you've done supposedly, or make up for all the times where you were distracted. So, yeah. So, yeah. So.
What about the when you do the mandala with the...
Right. That's a good question too. Yeah.
Mudras, the
Yeah.
hand motions?
Yeah, the mudra. Yeah, the mudra of the mandala offering. So yeah. So generally, we will put our malas around our around the symbol here, and this is a symbol of all phenomenal existence. It's Mount Meru is in the middle, and then the four continents. This is this idea of cosmology that India had from the Vedas and crept into Buddhism. So that's all of it's basically our universe that we live in. So that mudra, you take your two pinkies and put them together like this. I can't do it unless I do it fast. No, I can't do it. Okay. So your two pinkies are there. Your ring fingers are like come up in the center. So use your thumbs to kind of hold your pinkies down, and then your ring fingers come up in the center, and that symbolizes again Mount Meru. And then your index fingers come around your middle finger and kind of hold them like that. Okay. So that's the mudra of when we do the mandala offering. You got that? Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
And so you're visualizing actually holding basically all phenomenal existence in your hand, and you're saying like you're offering this to all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Dakinis, Dakinis, and everybody.
It's like does this represent like a samsaric existence, like a conditioned existence, or is it just?
Yeah.
I mean, Mount Meru is it's not within samsara. Is it a pure?
It is. It is still sort of samsara. It is still like, but you're visualizing it being purified. You're being.
This is a pure land.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Yeah. So you're visualizing the world in which we live in as being pure, because it is fundamental. It is primordially pure. It's only our concepts that make it impure. Anyway, so you're just saying like this as a pure land, I offer to you this entire thing, this entire existence in which we live in. So it's all beings, all the six realms. It's all the everything. And purified, and
as another gift.
Yeah. So everything in it, completely, all the enjoyable objects and all the wonderful things and pleasing things and all that, but without attachment or aversion or without ignorance,
This is a transactional one in our prayer, because you say, please, may we all be free of the three poisonous attitudes, right?
Sure.
So it's kind of like transactional in a way.
A little bit, but you're also trying to do it for all beings, and you're also just like completely letting go. You're saying like ultimately what I'm trying to generate here is this idea that from my own primordial wisdom, my own realization, which I haven't realized yet, but just imagined realization of primordial wisdom, I would see all things as being in a state of equality, and so I wouldn't need to get anything, So I don't need this per se, It's not like I see all these desirable objects and I want them for myself, You see them in this sense of like they're beyond desire and beyond aversion, and you're like all of them, because they're pure in and of themselves. So So in a little bit in the beginning, there's certainly, we're talking about accumulating merit, which we have this idea that it's like like the little coins in Super Mario Brothers or something, maybe, where every time you do something really great, and but it's not really like that. We're not accumulating like anything, That one just came out of nowhere.
That's great. I learned so much there.
I know, me too. So anybody who doesn't know what Super Mario Brothers is, look it up on Google or something, and you'll see. But Yeah. But in the beginning, we are caught up in our own
Now
concepts.
when you're
So
meditating, you're going to see this little
It's
guy.
like a little green tube.
Yesterday was like, because yesterday we did a bunch of practice on the solstice, and that was like 100 million times the merit supposedly. So we like scored. We scored.
So we got my $100 million worth out of that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we
Absolutely.
worked hard for it though.
We did. We did. I was tired after that. But yeah. So anyway, we're conceptual beings right now. So yeah, we do think in terms of giving and receiving and things like that. And so it's perfectly okay to think a little bit like, yeah, I hope to get like all these blessings, and I hope to get this realization, and I hope to get enough merit so that I can always be meeting the Dharma, and I can always be around teachers and things like that. Perfectly fine to think that, but we also, that's why we include like all beings, like I'm doing this not just for me but for all beings. And then they say like once you someone like Dzongtsar Khyentse Rinpoche says like, what happened, he was asked like, what happens when you become a Buddha, and he's like, well, you realize that you were never a sentient being, you never suffered, and there's no sentient beings at all. And he's got this big smile on his face, you're like, what?
Joke's on you.
I don't get it. But yeah, so it's like it's non-dual, non-conceptual, really impossible to understand with the conventional mind, So, but yeah, but we do it now, and we do make the offerings, and we try to do the good stuff with the body, speech, and mind, and to think about it as some sort of little transaction is okay. So, anyway. Do Buddhists believe in God? No. Okay, so next one. I mean, just no. It's just not part of the belief system. So, and I'm not really good at doing this, but His Holiness the Dalai Lama can do a really great logical explanation of why Buddhists can refute a creator, and I can't really do that, and I don't really feel comfortable doing that anyway. But basically, the idea is that I guess basically logically is like, if God created everything, then God has to be permanent and unchanging, and that if that's the case, then it's not possible for him to create anything, because nothing can come out of something that's permanent and unchanging. So that's probably not quite exactly right in terms of how the Dalai Lama would explain it, but basically there's logical refutations of a being, some being that created everything out of nothing, because everything comes out of causes and conditions. So the idea of a singular creator being is just logically indefensible in Buddhist logic. It doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't divine beings, that there aren't deities and things like that. It doesn't even necessarily mean that we can't have a concept that is like kind of a Gnostic concept of experiencing the divine. I think that is a lot of times people like Thomas Merton and St. Francis of Assisi and people like that, St. Clare, people like that had real genuine, in my opinion, from what I've read, real genuine experience of what in Buddhism we would call an enlightened mind, or the nature of mind that is transcendent. So it's just that this idea that there's some person that created things, or there was a causeless cause of the universe is not logically defensible. So the Buddhists don't believe in a creator. Yeah. Because it was basically, well, what happened? What was going on before the creator? So it's sort of like, the Big Bang, the Big Bang, that's where it started. It's like, well, what happened before the Big Bang?
Was there really a big bang?
Was there even really a Big Bang? There's a big, yeah, right, exactly. So,
Do
yeah,
we
there's
really exist?
Yeah, exactly. So, but actually, in Buddhist cosmology and Indian cosmology, they talk a lot about these like cycles of the universe coming into being and then being destroyed, coming into being and then being destroyed, endlessly.
Yugas?
Yeah, or kalpas they're called as well. Yeah, yugas. Yeah, so we're in the Kali Yuga right now, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
So, so there's, the Big Bang to me was like, once I started getting into Buddhism, I was like, oh, that's probably what they're talking about. Like all these like starts and the universe comes out of, this singularity and then, collapses back upon itself and then it expands again and then it comes back. And so that's a viable scientific theory these days. So, that's basically what they've been saying.
The universe is breathing.
Yeah, kinda. Yeah. So, yeah. Or the universe is the dream of Vishnu. So Brahma is the all-pervasive consciousness, and then out of his consciousness comes a lotus flower, and then Vishnu is born, and then I think that's what it is anyway. And then he opens his eye, and then a universe comes out, or something like that, and then goes back, and that comes out. Endlessly cycling through existences and universes. So I don't know. That's pretty cool. Okay. So anyway, like I say, that's a tough question for me. I don't feel comfortable answering that one definitively about the God question, but I tried my best, and I hope I didn't ruffle any feathers or anything. But that's basically what it is. But I do think that it's also, Buddhism is also very, very, it's very much in touch with the divine sort of aspect of reality. So it doesn't necessarily mean that, those who do believe in God are wrong or anything like that. Buddhism never says that. So it just says that we don't hold that as being logically defensible. Okay, so different types of Buddhism. So there are a ton of different types of Buddhism. Here at the Way of Compassion and Dharma Center, John holds a lineage of Tibetan Buddhism. We'll talk a little bit about which school of Tibetan Buddhism in the next section here, but this is a Tibetan Buddhist tradition which actually encompasses all three of the last three here of Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. Okay, so Hinayana means the lesser vehicle, Mahayana means the greater vehicle, and Vajrayana means the indestructible vehicle. So you can guess which of those schools came up with those terms. They said, like, you're the lesser vehicle, we're the greater vehicle. but I'm kidding a little bit. So there's three different kind of scopes of practice within those three. So in the Hinayana tradition, for example, you are very, very, very basically talking about individual liberation, just liberating oneself from samsara. In the Mahayana tradition, you are increasing your scope then to help all beings attain liberation. So not only just for yourself, but for all beings. And then the Vajrayana tradition, there's this notion of that all beings are primordially Buddhas. So then you're also incorporating then this Mahayana spiritual heroic spirit, and saying, like, let me help all beings, including myself, attain Buddhahood. So not just liberation, but Buddhahood, the big B. So that's basically very, very, very basically Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. You've also got Theravadan Buddhism, which is really a lot of people say it's like quite a bit like probably Buddhism was at the time of the Buddha. So people in Sri Lanka are still practicing what's called Theravadan Buddhism. And they do a lot of ethical training, and they do meditation as well. They do recitation of the sutras and things like that. But their focus is really on like strict and very pure and very strong ethical training. Okay. We've got the Thai forest tradition as well, which takes place in Thailand, and in the Thai forests, and that one is just one that sort of migrated there from India as well. All these traditions actually spread out through all throughout Asia. So you've got examples of Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana Buddhism in all Asian countries, or it had some history there, if it's not existent today still, and things like that. And so in the Thai forest tradition, I don't know that much about that tradition, but the people that I've come in contact to practice it are pretty amazing. They're wonderful practitioners. They've really tamed their egos. They've worked with their minds extensively. They do a lot of meditation in that practice. They go out into the woods, and they post up and they just do meditation, and they get a real realization, really deep realization. So that's really impressive stuff. And then Zen Buddhism, of course, that's how it manifested in China or in Japan, and so again, these topics are so huge. I'm just giving a couple sentences on each because my knowledge is limited as well. But Zen Buddhism has this also a focus on very strict meditation, where they sit there and they just sit, and it's very stripped down, and there's not a whole lot of commentary, because that's the problem. We're commenting on stuff all the time, and they already had at the time that Buddhism came there, their culture was already quite complex. So I think my theory on that, I think some people have said, is that Zen Buddhism is very stripped down. It's very aesthetically plain and simple and stark, almost stark, when you walk into a Zen temple and you have this sense of there's nothing going on here, but there's a lot going on here. and so when they sit down and they do meditation, they're really, because they had so many rules and so many things and so many dynasties and cultural hang-ups and all this sort of stuff. Not unlike we have here in the States. Our culture is also very busy. So they decided, this is really about getting to this non-conceptual state, this very unbusy state. So their focus is on that. And is also very much on non-duality too. So you've heard of Zen koans, these sort of little riddles, what's the sound of one hand clapping, and what was your faith? Yeah. Duh.
Got that figured out.
Or stuff like that. So so they're just they're looking to cut through conceptual thinking, which is just out of control. So just basically, Buddhism is a wonderful tradition. It's a wonderful system of philosophy, of understanding, because it went to every single culture over there. It completely took over, because it's malleable, because it doesn't really say you have to be this way, or you have to be this kind of person, or you have to be from this sort of ethnic lineage or anything like that. In fact, it's not about grouping people together in any way at all. It's simply about suffering, the reality of suffering, and how to get out of that. And so it can really apply to any culture. Any culture can take it on, and it doesn't have to have any sort of. It can take on the flavor of that culture. So it's like tofu. It really is like tofu. It's you add it into your dish, and it's.
That's the way I like it.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. But it's very nourishing. So I think.
So Thich Nhat Hanh would be which one of these?
He is. I think it's Vietnamese Zen. So it's Chan Buddhism. Yeah.
Chan.
Yeah, I think. Anyway, I check that out. Do a little Google search on which tradition he is. But he's from Vietnam, and it's definitely a very, very Zen-like tradition. So,
okay.
Yeah. But I think that his tradition would be considered Mahayana. So he's definitely talking a lot about compassion for others and things like that. It's quite different in flavor from the Tibetan, which encompasses these three aspects of Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana, and the Tibetan tradition really stresses very, very clearly that this is a path to ultimate liberation. This is a path to freedom from suffering and enlightenment and Buddhahood. So that is not found necessarily in the Zen tradition. It's not found in the Theravadan tradition. It's not found exclusively in Hinayana traditions or Thai forest tradition necessarily either. So it's not explicit. There's actually quite a bit of disagreement, actually, say between the Theravadins and the Vajrayana Buddhists. They've been arguing for centuries, really. They're like, no, but there's no, like the Theravadins, like there's no such thing as Vajrayana. There's no Buddhahood. People are not Buddhas, and they're like, and the Vajrayana's like, but yes, there are. And they have, logical and, and they have proof. They have proofs. So anyway, so there is some debate and some argument and disagreement among all these traditions as well. So that's something to consider as well when you're examining for yourself, what path do you want to follow? Examine it closely, Mostly in the beginning, because it's so vast and so difficult to get a handle on it all, you're going to have to use your heart a lot. You're going to have to use your intuition and decide, like, oh, well, Zen is right for me, And a lot of people get a lot out of that path, and I think the Zen tradition is amazing. So, too. But for me, like, I checked it out. I was like, this is pretty cool, but I kept coming back to these Tibetan Buddhist places, So, so a lot of it has to do with your karma and has to do with just what your heart says. So use your head, but also listen to your heart as well. So, any questions about that? I know that's a broad, vast subject. Yes?
I've heard that the different traditions are like pulling on different corners of the same rug. Like, kind of like you're tugging at the same thing. But my question is, in these different types of Buddhism that you've laid out here, do they all lead to enlightenment, or are some more limited?
Yeah, they don't necessarily. They don't, and that's the thing. Yeah, like so I didn't mention too that Theravadan and Hinayana are actually considered to be synonymous as well. So, so the Hinayana is about individual liberation, and that's it. That's really the end of the line. That's the highest attainment. And Tibetan Buddhism, which is basically Vajrayana Buddhism, which Vajrayana Buddhism ideally is going to encompass, and we're trying to encompass the two paths that are quote unquote underneath it. We shouldn't really think about it as better or worse or things like that. But anyway, so the Vajrayana clearly states that that the Buddha had three turnings of the wheel of Dharma. That he taught the Four Noble Truths. He taught emptiness and interdependence in the Heart Sutra, and then he also taught Buddha nature. Okay, so he had three distinct classifications of teachings, and he taught that. So here's the foundation here. Here's the nature of reality right here, and then here is the ultimate sort of goal of a being. Their ultimate nature is Buddhahood, is complete transcendence. Not extinction, not cessation of their like awareness or something like that, where they just dissolve and they're just gone. It's not quite that there's like any sort of personhood left, but that there's this completely liberated awareness that is beyond concepts, beyond duality. So the Theravadins say no, that's not what the Buddha taught. They don't believe that. So as a result, so it's like if you say, like, for example, and I think, probably a lot of people use this analogy, if, you are setting out on a journey and you pick a destination, that's as far as you're going to get, and once you get there, you're going to be like, this is the destination that I set out for. So it's like in Theravadan Buddhism, they set that destination of individual liberation, but the Vajrayana Buddhists set the liberation in a different place. They say like that it's much further than that. And so even in the Buddhist texts that they study on the different paths and the ways to get to enlightenment, they split it up into two, and they say, here's the Hinayana over here, and once you reach that level, then you've got to come over here and start at the beginning of this path to get to Buddhahood. So it's two distinct paths. So it's two different things.
What is the third turning? Buddha nature.
Buddha nature. Yeah.
And was that like, I know a little bit about the Heart Sutra only from reading it, but I relatively don't know much about Buddha nature, the turning of that.
Yeah.
Is there a specific time in history when that occurred?
Yeah, I think it was when it was later on in his life. I'm blanking out on his age. And it was also like couched in a lot of like he didn't just teach it here, he taught it to like vast hosts of beings in countless dimensions and stuff like that. So, because of the nature of Buddha nature, which is limitless and beyond conceptualization and any sort of limitation, it's able to be, transmitted, in that vast way. So, so that's why when you get into a little bit of Buddhist philosophy and stuff like that, like they're always talking about this. I don't want to say they're cutting down. They're always disproving the Hinayana hypotheses, and they're saying like, no, this is why like logically that's not possible. That there's only individual liberation. Actually, the only possibility is Buddhahood. And they go through these like extensive and very complicated and difficult to understand logical refutations and proofs. So yeah. Okay. And what time is it? Oh, we're running a little late here, but. Let's see. So it's about 7:12. You okay? Good? Yeah? Okay. So we can just talk about a few more things here. The four main schools of Tibetan Buddhism. I think we talked about that a little bit. Jason, did we talk about that a little bit? You and I at one point? Somebody was asking me about it.
A little bit.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, so basically in Tibetan Buddhism, so you've got Tibetan Buddhism being Vajrayana Buddhism, which encompasses the Mahayana and the Hinayana. And then you've got within Tibetan Buddhism, you've got these different schools, basically just different little different flavors. You have to understand that Tibetan Buddhism like developed in this very insular place for 1,500 years or something like that. So it had a lot of opportunities to, for things to change and to people have different ideas and have it to be refreshed from time to time. There was times where it was almost wiped out and then like restarted again and things like that. So and just like in Christianity, we've got Protestantism and Unitarianism and Catholicism and all the other stuff. So you've got different people basically saying starting their own little thing. Similar in Tibetan Buddhism, although they really are pretty unified in the sense that they really do all have the same objective and the same destination in mind. So if whatever school of Tibetan Buddhism that you sign up for is really a matter of your personality more than anything else, maybe karmic connections and things like that, or birth or whatever it is. But they're looking at heading to the same place. Buddhahood is that's the direction that we're going in. So and it's all just slightly different in terms of presentation. Maybe a couple of minor philosophical points might be a little bit different here and there, but really basically even a lot of the prayers are going to be the same. A lot of the texts that are being studied are going to be the same. All the ideas are going to be the same. The rituals will be basically the same with different, slightly different flourishes and things like that for depending on the region they came from or the Lama that founded that tradition or whatever. So there's a lot of stuff within Tibetan Buddhism itself. So if you're attracted to Tibetan Buddhism, then it's becomes like, great. So now I got to pick, Nyingma, Gelug, Kagyu, or Sakya. Like, what am I going to be? You know, I mean, so it really is just a nightmare of shopping choices. You know.
Identity crisis.
It's super. I did. I had at first. I was like, but I thought I was a Gelugpa. But now I'm with an Nyingma Lama, and but I really feel strongly that the Kagyu tradition is really nice too, and and then but Sakya Trinzen Rinpoche is so amazing, and yeah, it was horrible. So, but then eventually it just sort of naturally you'll naturally settle if this is the direction you're going to go. So. Do a little reading on it, do a little study if you like, and just explore different teachers, and just know that all of these teachers, like for example, the Dalai Lama is the head of the Gelug tradition, right? The Gelugpas. But all of us in Tibetan Buddhism look at him as being like the sort of the pinnacle of Tibetan Buddhism, and the same with the head of the Kagyu tradition, which is His Holiness the Karmapa, who's the head of the basically all of the Kagyu schools, and everyone looks at him with great reverence and respect. And there's a teacher in Virginia, Kandrola, and she's kind of a Nyingma Kagyu teacher, Rinpoche, and everyone in Tibetan Buddhism would look to her as being like someone worthy of respect and worthy of listening to. So even though there have been times where there's been some pretty sharp divisions maybe in terms of like our tradition is the best and we get to the Buddhahood better than anybody else, this kind of idea. It's all really the same. So yeah. Okay, so some major pilgrimage sites in India and Nepal, if you're ever interested in going. It's said that to do the 4 pilgrimage sites that mark the 4 major points in the Buddha's life, his birth, his enlightenment, where he taught first, and where he died, are really, really beneficial. So if you feel that calling to explore that as a possibility of doing some sort of pilgrimage or something like that, those places are Lumbini, which is just over the border of India into Nepal, and that's where the Buddha was born. You've got Bodh Gaya, which is where he sat and attained enlightenment, and then a little ways away is near Varanasi, India, is called Sarnath, and that's where he gave the first teaching, the first turning of the wheel, and then he died when he was about 80 years old in Kushinagar. So to go to those places is extremely difficult, and it's really, it's just trying because it's traveling in India, which is tough, and getting around and all that sort of stuff, and it's hot and it's dusty and it's just it's scary sometimes and all that sort of stuff. But it's really enriching and beautiful and can really inspire you if that's something you ever want to do. I highly recommend it. So, and then Rajgir is the place where he taught the Heart Sutra, and that's actually near Bodh Gaya. So if you're in Bodh Gaya, you might as well get a taxi and get 2 for 1. Yeah. So let's see. And then the last 2 questions were really great, and these were from somebody who was saying, well, how do I know if I'm a Buddhist? What's that all about? And we talked a little bit about this the first week. We talked about going for refuge and what that means. And basically, how do you know you're a Buddhist is after you've kind of explored the Buddhist teachings a little bit, probably gone into read a little bit at least about the 4 Noble Truths, and reflected on them to the point where you actually have some sort of feeling that, yeah, this is true. These are aptly named. They are actually true. Yes, there's the nature of existence is unsatisfactoriness and suffering. There's a cause of suffering, that is self-grasping. Cessation of suffering is possible, and the way to get to that cessation is through the Noble Eightfold Path. So once you've kind of explored that a little bit and kind of taken it on as being something that you agree with and you find that makes sense, you could probably call yourself a Buddhist at that point. You don't necessarily have to go through the refuge ceremony, like the actual ceremony of becoming a Buddhist. You can actually even stay like a Christian or a Muslim or Jewish or whatever, but take that as being something useful and something helpful. And then you could say like, yeah, I'm a Christian, but I also follow some of what the Buddha said. So that's totally possible and totally acceptable as well. So you don't necessarily have to be a Buddhist per se. But I would say you kind of know you're a Buddhist when you know you're a Buddhist. You might have maybe for me, the first year I was like, am I a Buddhist or not? I think I'm a Buddhist. I'm not sure though. I don't know. But then I met I saw His Holiness the Dalai Lama the first time, and he gave a refuge ceremony, and I was like, I'm doing this, and I did it, and I said all the words, and I was like, I guess I'm a Buddhist now then. But no, I just knew it in my heart. I was like, yeah, I am for sure. I had no doubt that that's what I wanted to do. So it's not really super important, actually. It's just really up to you if you want to go that route or not. But there is a ceremony. It's called the refuge ceremony, and you make some promises and some vows and some aspirations, and you take precepts, they're called. You can take up to 5 of them: not killing, not stealing, not stealing, not lying, not misusing sexuality, and avoiding intoxicants. And then, so those are the 5 Buddhist precepts. And so you take any number of those, whatever you're comfortable with, and along with these refuge vows that you take, and then Shazam, you're a Buddhist. Just
Shazam.
Is it the same as taking the Bodhisattva vows?
That's different. That's actually that's different. Yeah. So
that is to become a monk.
No, you can take a bodhisattva vows. You have to have refuge vows before you can take bodhisattva vows, though. That's technically what you need to do. So
you can either be a monk or a householder.
Yeah, monastic or householder. You can be a monk or a nun. Either. The Buddha set out from the beginning. He was like, we need to have these 4 aspects. We need to have monks. We need to have nuns. We need to have laymen. We need to have lay women. We need to have, it's called the fourfold sangha, and that's the only way, he said, for my teachings. He said to be established in a country, in a land. So without those things, it's not really a Buddhist land yet. It's not really a Buddhist country. So so those are the 4 different ways you can go. So monastic, obviously, lay men and women, we don't take vows of celibacy. So you can get married, you can have children, all that sort of stuff. Whereas monks and nuns, the most obvious feature, of course, is celibacy. The celibacy vow. Maybe the most obvious is the shaved head, and the robes. But yeah. So they take vows of celibacy, and then other vows on top of the 5 precepts. They take a number more. So. And then how do I find a teacher? Great question. And this will be the last one unless we have any other questions. Very carefully. Very carefully. So don't take looking for a teacher to be, don't get too stressed out about it in terms of, I need a teacher, and if I don't have a teacher, I can't be a practitioner. Because a lot of that is going to have to do with karma and circumstances and availability of teachers and things like that. So maybe some years might go by after you decide you're a Buddhist before you meet your teacher. But while you're looking for a teacher, you need to examine teachers very closely. So there's a lot of teachings on how to find a teacher and what qualities a teacher needs to have in order to be a qualified teacher, and what qualities a student needs to be in order to be a student of a qualified teacher too. So it's a two-way street. So I would highly recommend looking into those sort of teachings. The Dalai Lama gives many teachings on them. There's a lot of explanations of that, a lot of lists of the different qualities of the teacher, and so on and so forth. But I would say that basically the main criteria is, does the teacher kind of walk the talk, That's the main thing. Do they have the ethics? Do they have the bodhicitta? It's called the mind of awakening. Some realization. If you're looking for that, really, a real serious, guru-student relationship, then they should have some realization. They should have that aspiration or wish to just, without any selflessness whatsoever, to be only working for the benefit of others. So that's called bodhicitta, or one aspect of bodhicitta, the mind of awakening. So you got to be careful, because there are, unfortunately, like with anything, with anything that people do, we bring our peopleness to it. And so sometimes, people can portray themselves as being something that they're not. And so we just have to be careful. We have to be careful and just make sure we're examining and we're not jumping in with our eyes closed and without looking into things. So you can, like, for example, first of all, listen, do your own study of the Dharma. Listen to their teachings. Is it in accordance with the Dharma? Then you look at their behavior, like how do they treat people? How do they act? How do you feel when you're around them? How do their students act? That's a big one, because they're longtime students. Do they seem to be better people? It's not that Buddhism is a self-improvement kick or anything like that, but are they loving? Are they kind? Are they compassionate? Are their minds settled? Are their afflictive emotions less? Or are they still just greedy, backstabbing, gossipy, people? Then if that's the case, then maybe that's a sign. Could maybe not. Who knows? But you just have to use your discernment, basically. You have to discern carefully. So how do you find a teacher? Examination. Don't jump into it. There's no rush. Listen to teachings online. Read their books. Go to their teachings. Check out their students. Really examine. Listen to your heart again too.
So where do you find the Buddhist teachings?
YouTube.
YouTube.
No, there's so much out there online now, though. I'm only half kidding. You can find a lot out there. And where do you find the Buddhist teachings elsewhere?
Written down anywhere?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, there's so many sutras that are being translated and things like that. There's a small percentage that have been translated into English, so there's a lot to be done yet, and there's a lot of translating going on. But there's a lot of Dharma out there. So you can read the sutras translated from the Pali Canon. It's called, or you can check out. I would recommend, especially in this tradition, and I've got on here some teachers and authors that you can check out, and some books actually that I've listed as well, that will have a lot more, give you some breadcrumbs to follow, So, but there's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of things that have been translated. So. Yeah, so then, there's some books here that I read that were really great. I thought anyway were very helpful, and then some of the teachers and the authors are people that I've examined and John's examined, and we've looked at a little bit. So Thich Nhat Hanh and Shunryu Suzuki are both not really in the Tibetan tradition, but if that's your flavor, then that can be nice. That they can be helpful, but most of them are the Tibetan tradition. So, and then some websites too with some more stuff. So, yeah. Any other questions or thoughts or?
I was just thinking, there's the Bible and there's the Torah and the Quran. Mm-hmm. And there's Bhagavad Gita. Mm-hmm. But I can't think of a book.
There's not. Okay, there's so that's more your question. Okay. So there's actually a whole collection of books. And there's two groupings of these collections. There's the Kangyur, that's what it's called in Tibetan, which is the sutras. These were the actual words of the Buddha. And there's 100 and some odd volumes. There's a lot of volumes. And then there's the Tengyur, which is the commentaries by the Indian masters.
Tengyur?
Tengyur, yeah. Kangyur and Tengyur. Okay, so you've got the Buddhist speech in the Kangyur. That's all the sutras. That's all those stories where it's like, thus I have heard, and then they go on, and the Buddha is interacting with people, or there's different people asking the Buddha questions and all that sort of stuff, and then those are divided into different sections depending on subject matter and things like that. And then you have the Tengyur, which is the commentaries of the Indian masters, mostly from a monastery called Nalanda, is what the extant ones are in the Tibetan tradition. And so you've got all these super scholars that were also realized as well, who then took all the things that the Buddha's taught, and then they commented on them and clarified things, and logically using Indian logic were able to say this is why what he says is true. And so there's a lot of emphasis on logic in those things too. So because the tradition just got really rich and really developed over many hundreds of years in India, and they had a lot of time to sit around and talk about it, and it was mostly guys, and guys like to make things complicated, so they made things really. So again, in that tradition, in that side, on that side of the library, there's also hundreds of volumes as well. So hundreds. I should know the number. I think it's. Let's see. Let's find out. But it's hundreds of volumes altogether. So there's not just one book, or one compilation of books or something like that. It's almost impossible for one. It is impossible really for one person to master all of it in one lifetime, except for a few exceptional beings. So. See if we can find out here. It's about 108 volumes, and the Tengyur is 224 volumes.
224?
Yep.
So the 108 volumes relates to the Mala, maybe.
Yeah. So a lot, and now that's only that aspect, and then you've got 1,500 years of Tibetan Buddhism, where there's all these holy texts written, commenting on the commentaries, and consolidating the teachings into Lamrim texts and things like that. So there's graduated paths where they say okay, so it's impossible for really anybody to figure out these two stacks of books here. So we're going to take it all and we're going to distill it into what's called Lamrim, the graduated path to enlightenment. So they try to say okay, so here's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and they just kind of walk you through it. But it all is based upon those two collections, and then those are further distilled down. Then the Lamrim text can be further distilled down into things like the 8 verses of thought transformation, or the 37 practices of Bodhisattva, and things like that. So, yeah.
It's like the Reader's Digest version.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The absolutely. Cool. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. So let's go ahead and dedicate the merit of this evening we've shared together. Wonderful discussion, wonderful questions. Hopefully, some answers that aren't completely confusing, and also just spending time with this class. We've created some positive potential here, some merit. So let's go ahead and dedicate that merit now to be the causes and conditions for the future for ourselves and all beings to attain full awakening. And thank you everyone online. Thank you for participating, and we'll see you all soon. Okay.
Oh wow. All y'all.
California, but Oklahoma style, so we still say y'all.
I say y'all also.
Oh, y'all.
You say y'all so?
Yes.
I say y'all also.
Y'all so.
Y'all so.
Say